Well, most of the attention for the Seahawks 10-3 record has gone to the flashier skill position guys, right? The year Sam Darnold's having, certainly JSN and the numbers he's putting up, and then, of course, that dominant defense. I'm not sure enough credit is being given to how much better the Seahawks are up front on offense. Even though they have the youngest offensive line in the league, the improvement has been dramatic. And yet, for some of you, still not good enough, and you still want to make a bunch of changes. Well, today we're going to get some insight, not just on the Seahawks themselves and the NFC West, but on that offensive line and some of the intricacies that go into building a good one. Former NFL veteran offensive lineman Ross Tucker, now an analyst for CBS Sports, is joining me today on the show. We're going to get his thoughts on the Seahawks, his thoughts on the division, who's the best team in this conference, and we're going to talk some offensive line play. Yeah, of course we are. Ross Tucker joining me next on the Seahawks Forever podcast.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
The Sizzle All the Way sale going on at Omaha Steaks right now. If you like USDA certified steaks, well, you can get them delivered to your door, or better yet, since it's the holiday season, have them delivered to the doorstep of a loved one. Right now at omahasteaks.com, they're going to give you 50% off site-wide. And then when you go to checkout, they're going to give you an additional $35 off if you use the promo code FOREVER. So that, again, omahasteaks.com, 50% off site-wide and $35 off at checkout for using the promo code FOREVER. Meanwhile, if you haven't checked out the Sleeper app, it is not too late, because it's not just football, it's all the other sports as well. But as the season winds down, you can still get in on some of those games of skill. And right now is the best time to sign up, because Sleeper is going to give you $20 just to get started right off the top without even having to make a deposit. If you want to make a deposit, they're going to match that first one up to $100, 100%. Again, use the promo code FOREVER at Sleeper, the Sleeper app, the number one fastest growing sports app in the country. And it is so for a reason. Check out the Sleeper app today. All right, really excited about this one. Now, I only had Ross for a limited amount of time today, and so you'll notice at the end of the interview, I don't know, you might see my eyes light up a little bit when we start to talk about offensive line play. Would love to get him back on someday and spend more time diving into that a little bit, but his insight is invaluable. He played for some of the greatest coaches ever to coach the football game, and his path to the NFL is one that I think you'll appreciate as well. Here's my conversation with Ross Tucker of CBS Sports. All right, Ross, thanks for doing this, taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. Can't wait to get your thoughts on these 10-3 Seattle Seahawks and what I think is the best division in football. But before we do that, you've got a really cool thing that you're representing right now. And as we get closer to Christmas, why don't you tell the folks what the best holiday gift anyone that loves the Seahawks could get?
Well, especially with how good the Seahawks are this year, and looks like they're going to be in the next few years with this core roster with Mike McDonald as their head coach. It's called futurefans.com. And I am super, super passionate, Dan, about the sport of football and about the love of it and getting young people to embrace it. And I don't know if you have kids or niece, nephew, whatever, or friends that have kids. It's actually really hard to get young people, kids, to sit there and watch the whole game with you. It's not like it was for us with our dads. I mean, my nephews, they don't really want to sit there and watch the game. My daughters, these guys kind of cracked the code with this, storybook-led activity box. I'm so enamored with it that I actually invested after I talked to 4 or 5 families that all said it worked and that their children wouldn't sit there and watch the games with them until they tried this futurefans.com. So what I tell people is I think it's $60, but you get a discount if you go to futurefans.com and throw your email address in. So it's like you're getting a gift for your child or children, but you're really getting them to yourself, right? Because you're really getting them to sit there and watch the Hawks with you for 3 hours every week, hopefully for years and years and years. So if you want that gift, the gift of fandom, the gift of quality time with your child, it's futurefans.com. Futurefans.com. You got to check it out because these might be back to being the glory days for the Seahawks again.
Yeah, this looks super cool. I've got 2 young nieces right now, and my sister and her husband they're casual football fans. So this is going to be my little sneaky gift to them this Christmas to try and get them on the right path. So I appreciate that.
I
I
love
think
it.
it's
I
cool.
love
I
it.
think it's cool. Blows them away. All right, let's talk about these Seahawks. Now they're 10-3 as we sit here today, about to play the Colts on Sunday, and in one of the craziest storylines I think of the season so far, maybe even facing Phillip Rivers. Just give me your general thoughts on what you're seeing from this team so far.
Well, it's good timing because I do power rankings every week, and I have the Seahawks as the second best team in pro football. And I heard what you said earlier about what you think is the best division in football. Well, I got news for you. I agree because I have the Rams as the
Got
number
the
one
Rams
best team
one.
in the
Yeah.
NFL.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just watching them. I felt this way probably for over a month that they're the best 2 teams. And it's really a shame, to be honest with you, that one of them is going to have to try to win 3 road playoff games to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Because they do feel like the best teams to me. I think, certainly you can look at net point differential, and that would lead you to go that way as well. But I didn't even know that. I just go by watching them. And the Rams, it feels like they're a little bit more offensive based. The Seahawks a little bit more defensive based, but they're both really, really good.
There seems to be this well, not seems to be. There is a narrative right now in Seattle that even though they're 10-3, and by the way, every other time they've been that good after 13 games, they've gone to the playoffs to the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, in their history, they've made it all 3 times that they've had that kind of a record after that many games. And yet, I get a sense in engaging with the fan base every day that not that fans aren't happy, but that until they get over that hump and start beating the Rams and 49ers, none of it matters. It almost feels like an Ohio State, Michigan kind of a setup, right? You can go 11-1, but you lose that one. Well, we still don't buy you yet. I've been making the argument for a while that where this team is, as young as they are, they don't necessarily have to beat the Rams now, but it would be huge if they did. Where do you stand on that? Like, do they have to do that over these next 4 weeks? They get the 49ers and the Rams again. Do they need to beat those teams in order to be taken seriously?
Well, so it's interesting that that's what the prevailing thought is in Seattle on some level. The point what I'm hearing from people, and probably rightfully so, is they're not really buying the Seahawks because Sam Darnold's their quarterback. They're not really believing that the Seahawks are a legitimate Super Bowl contender because they're not buying that Sam Darnold will play well enough in the playoffs when it matters. He obviously never did with the Jets or Carolina or San Francisco. Sure. And then last year he had a terrific season with the Vikings, obviously. But when it really came down to it, and they got to those big games at the end of the year, he didn't play well. And no one believes or trusts that he will this time. And that's the way the sport is. I mean, think about this week, okay? And I posted this on social media recently at Ross Tucker NFL. You've got the 2 teams with the best record in the NFL. The Patriots 11-2, the Broncos 11-2. Both of them are underdogs at home to teams with less than 10 wins. Patriots are underdogs to the Bills. The Broncos are underdogs to the Packers, which is a great indicator of how people really feel about those teams. So the Seahawks are on some level, I guess, in the same category as the Broncos and Patriots, although I do think people think more highly of the Seahawks. I have it Rams 1, Seahawks 2, Patriots 3. I'd have to check and see who I have after that, but I'm a believer in the Seahawks because I think they really are that good.
It's interesting. Some of the best quarterbacks we've seen play over the last 20 years have had similar circumstances where they've had a nemesis, right? Or they've had kryptonite. Peyton couldn't beat Brady, right? Lamar Jackson has struggled against the Chiefs. So we've seen some examples of that. I was just watching the Netflix documentary America's Team the other day, and for the first few years of Troy Aikman's career, couldn't beat the Philadelphia Eagles, and it wasn't until he did that they really took that team seriously. So it does feel like this matchup in a week and a half might be bigger for Sam Darnold than it is for the Seahawks, that he's going to have to slay that dragon at some point.
Yeah. And obviously, Seahawks fans are hoping it's this year and he does it. And, you know, I think he will at some point over the next couple of years. I can't guarantee that this year because if they don't win the division and, they're playing, although, you know what? I'll take the Seahawks all day over the NFC South champ. Now, maybe by then the Bucks kind of get their what together again.
Right. Yeah.
But if the Seahawks are the 5 and they play the Bucks or maybe the Panthers, I'll be all over the Seahawks in that game. I can tell you that much right now.
Nice. You can see by the helmets behind you that in your career, you played for some of the blue blood organizations, some of the greatest organizations in football, and some of the best coaches in football. Marty Schottenheimer, you had some exposure to Bill Belichick, Bill Parcells in your career. How do you feel about the career arc to this point for Mike Macdonald?
Really, really good. 2 thoughts, by the way. I'm going to surprise you with something. One is that the best coach I think I ever had was Marty Schottenheimer. So better than Belichick, better than Parcells, better than Gibbs. Now, he doesn't have the resume necessarily of those. I'm just going by as a player sitting in the room watching them, and obviously Brian was out there in Seattle for a while and he's doing a nice job, I think, with the Dallas Cowboys. Mike Macdonald is super impressive. I saw that clip of him recently talking about you either have like a philosophy and a belief, or you don't, and something that you stick with. And I really liked that. I liked that messaging. But I had multiple conversations with him when he was the DC with the Ravens because I did Ravens Cardinals for TV that year, and then I did a couple radio games, including in the playoffs. And he's an impressive guy. I mean, he is a very impressive guy, impressive coach. I think the Seahawks, kind of hit a home run there with him, and I think he's shown it with what he's done these first 2 years, both of which I think were probably unexpected. I don't know a lot of people thought they'd have the record they had last year or this year.
You're a guy that had to fight for everything that he got in the pro games, fight and scratch, go from one organization to the next, had to work your way through some practice squads at certain times of your life, coming from an Ivy League school. There's a lot of guys on this Seahawks roster that have similar backgrounds, a lot of undrafted free agents and guys that were thought of as backups who have now shown themselves to be not only starters, but good starters that are helping this team win. Does it, when you see rosters like that have a good mix of guys, you're always going to have the high draft picks, but the teams that do a better job of scouting the undrafted guys and actually developing them, do those teams take on a little bit different personality in your eye?
I think they do. And one of the things I hope your audience appreciates it, Dan, you clearly have done a lot of research, before this interview of me, which is cool. I don't know if you know this one fun fact, but so I'm going to tell you. In 2001, when I was a rookie in Washington and Marty Schottenheimer was the head coach, do you know who the number one personnel executive was on the team?
Was Schneider on that staff?
That's right.
Yeah.
John Schneider. And
John
honestly,
Schneider. Okay.
I think he was like 28, Dan.
Wow.
I mean, he was young. They called him Boy Wonder. Now, Marty had final say, but he was the number one personnel executive in the organization. I mean, and he was a young guy that Marty had brought in there. And he kept me. He kept me as an undrafted rookie free agent. Now, like I said, Marty had the final say, but Schneider and I developed a good relationship that year and have had one ever since. And I do think, Marty used to say all the time, you win with people. And he would say, he was very clear about this. He wanted to pick, sign, draft, keep the right people, not the right players.
Hmm.
And man, was he ahead of his time. Because if you get guys that are dedicated and professionals and love football, and it just creates a culture of winning. Whereas if you get guys that maybe are really gifted, but they just do it because they're good at it or because they're making money from it, I think it's hard to really win big with those type of guys. And I think Marty figured that out before a lot of people.
You can see why Schneider to this day speaks of Marty in such reverential tones. He's obviously, Schneider has carried a lot of those qualities and priorities with him throughout his career and still does today. I know that your time is limited, and so I want to finish with this. I want to talk about your wheelhouse, right? Your first love, and that is the offensive line, and that's should get as much credit as any aspect of the Seahawks roster for their success this year, because that has been their Achilles heel for 10 years. Every single year, the narrative is the offensive line's not good enough. It's holding back the offense. What's Schneider going to do to fix it? It's better than it's been since the last time they were in a Super Bowl. I want to ask you this then. We've heard for a couple of years, Joe Thomas was very outspoken about this last year, about lack of development, and these offensive linemen just aren't coming out of college ready to play in the NFL. Casual fans think they know offensive line play, but what would you say? Because the Seahawks have the youngest offensive line in the league, and it still shows its head at some point. What's the most important thing that you can tell a casual fan that they might misunderstand about the current state of offensive line play in the NFL?
Well, I guess what I would tell you is that it's very similar to most professions, where the more time on task and the more time on task with colleagues, the better off you'll be as a company, as a unit, whatever. So I am a believer that continuity and chemistry matter. Obviously, you have to have the good fortune of staying healthy, but being able to keep the same guys. I think about the Broncos in the 90s, or the Patriots offensive line with Brady, and the Colts offensive line with Peyton Manning. They kept a lot of those guys around for years, and it really put them in, I thought, a good spot. I always had respect for the organizations that would promote guys from practice squad, and those guys end up starting games or having roles, because then there's a level of trust there. You know that they've put the time in and they understand the system. They understand what they're being asked to do. Here's one way I would describe it, Dan. When you're next to somebody for the first time and you're not sure what you need to do, or that they know what they need to do, you might make the call. Like, let's say tug. That's tackle down, guard around, okay? You want to make sure that young tackle knows to come down. Well, after you do that once or whatever, we always love to say that D linemen are dumb. They're not that dumb, okay? So if they hear it a couple times, they know that. So when you get to another level of familiarity with the guy next to you, you don't say tug. You just say, yep. Like, to make sure you're on the same page, but you don't have to say the word. You know that guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Well, when you really get good? When you're making dummy calls. When you're saying deuce, like it's a front side power. So the D tackle will go to a knee to take on the double team, but it's really a backside scoop on zone. You're making dummy calls to mess with the D linemen and linebackers mentally, and you can make a dummy call because the guys next to you know what they're doing, and they know you're making a dummy call. But you got to really build that up over time to be willing to use dummy calls, because you don't want to make a dummy call and unfortunately the guy next to you does the wrong thing then because he's a dummy. So you want to be able to give those fake calls if you can.
Yeah. Man, I know I got to let you go. I could spend an hour nerding out with you on offensive line play. It's been such a big issue here for a while. So final question. You say you've got Rams 1, Seahawks 2 in your power rankings. Is that how you see the division shaking out? Or do you think the Seahawks take care of business in week 16 and win this division?
Where's that game?
It's in Seattle.
Which is interesting because they've kind of been, almost better on the road than they have been at home over the last couple of years under Mike McDonald. I think that the Rams are the best team, and I would go with Stafford and the Rams over Darnold and the Seahawks right now.
Yeah.
I think, if they played a best of 7, I think that'd be a heck of a lot of fun. I'd be very curious to see how that would play out. But for right now, I would say I'll go with the Rams. I got it. Rams 1, Seahawks 2, Patriots 3, Broncos 4. I'll take the Rams in that game, but certainly the Seahawks have a heck of a chance to win the division, which would just be massive, absolutely massive.
Yeah, the top 3 teams in the NFC West have more combined wins than all but one other complete division. It's crazy how good it's been. Ross, I really appreciate this. Thanks for your time, man.
It is my pleasure, Dan. Thank you so much for having me. If you liked anything I had to say, feel free to follow me on social media at Ross Tucker NFL. And I do highly recommend futurefans.com. You can go to Fast Fashion Brewing for yourself. Go to futurefans.com for any of the kids in your life.
And I'll put all those links for you down in the description of the video too. Thanks, Ross.
All right. Thank you.
You can also hear Ross on his own podcast, the Ross Tucker Football Podcast on the DraftKings Network. Really appreciated him taking the time to be on today. What'd you think of what he had to say about the Rams, the Seahawks, where they sit? Man, there's a lot of heavy lifting to be done over the next 4 weeks, but how exciting is it that they have put themselves in this position? Bottom line is the Seahawks run the table, win their next 4 games. They not only win the division, but they'll have the number 1 seed in the NFC. That's the way it looks right now when you start to run all the simulators and all of the possibilities. Speaking of possibilities, it sounds like, as insane as this sounds, the Seahawks may be facing Phillip Rivers on Sunday. He was officially signed to the Colts practice squad today after working out for them last night. 44 years old, hasn't played since 2019, is not only eligible for the Hall of Fame, but he's actually a Hall of Fame semifinalist in this year's class. That's how insane all of this is. Look, I still think it's more likely that Riley Leonard starts this game, but it sure sounds like the Colts would be more willing to play Phillip Rivers ahead of Brett Ripien if it came to that on Sunday. And you're starting to hear all the narrative now that Phillip Rivers runs the same Shane Steichen Colts offense for the high school team that he coaches. So he's familiar with the offense. There's reports today, he's in the best shape of his life. He looks like he's in better shape even than when he was playing. It's insane to me. Look, the bottom line is, if the Colts have to run Phillip Rivers out there on Sunday, it's going to be bad. It's going to be bad for them. Wrote a piece for Seahawks on SI earlier today about the Seahawks' 3 keys to victory. And one of them is their running game, how much better that's been over the last 5 weeks. But also, this Indianapolis team looks a lot different than it did 4 weeks ago. Heading into their bye, they were 8-2. And Jonathan Taylor had just come off a 244-yard game in Berlin. He was setting the league on fire since that game. So heading into the Colts bye week, by the way, hold on, got some notes written down here. They were averaging 130. Jonathan Taylor was averaging 113.9 yards per game on 6.02 yards per carry. In the last 3 games, all losses for the Colts since the bye, he's averaging 72.3 yards rushing and 3.74 yards per carry. That's going to do it for me. A little programming note. We have decided to bump the Seahawks Syndicate back. We're doing it every other week on Wednesdays. We're going to bump that back to next week so that it lines up better with the Seahawks timing. So the Seahawks Syndicate, again, it's a roundtable with myself, Bryce Coots of the Hawk's Eye, Brandon Kane of Hawks Nest and Mookie Alexander from field goals. We bumped it back because that way next Wednesday, we'll be talking on the eve of the Rams game, and then it'll line up with 2 weeks after that, getting us ready for the 49ers game. So no Seahawks Syndicate tomorrow. We'll have that next week. Not sure about my content over the next 2 days. My dad's service is coming up on Friday. We've got some last minute arrangements. My fiance is coming in tomorrow. I'm not quite sure what the schedule looks like, but I will do whatever I can to get content up over the next couple of days as we head into this weekend. Thanks for watching. Always thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit that thumbs up so that it pushes this video out and puts it in front of more people. I am a full-time independent content creator. This is what I do for a living. Any other way that you want to help support me is listed and linked down below in the description. Until next time, forever and always, go Hawks. Thanks for watching, you guys.